Tonight on Frontline, Tiananmen Square, June 1989.
People started to scream at us, take pictures, take video, tell the world what's going on. They're killing innocent people.
In the wake of a bloody crackdown on pro-democracy demonstrators, one solitary man defied the awesome power of the Chinese state.
This man just went out and he said, stop. And the tank stopped.
But who was he?
In a sense, he stood for the ordinary people.
And what happened to him?
He just melted into the crowd and he was gone.
Tonight, veteran filmmaker Anthony Thomas investigates the fate of this heroic figure.
For over a year, we also followed every lead.
And explores the bold gamble of China's leaders to quell the spirit of Tiananmen.
How do you prevent the fire from spreading?
Through their open embrace of capitalism.
It is an amazing miracle what has happened since 1989.
Tough political repression.
If you've ever seen security people manhandle a Chinese citizen, they're really brutal.
And strict censorship of the media.
But not one single image of Tank Man.
Leading U.S. companies like Google, Yahoo, Cisco, and Microsoft have compromised their duties as responsible corporate citizens.
This was not something that we did enthusiastically or not something that we're proud of at all.
Tonight on Frontline, the story behind one of the most powerful images of our time.
What this young man did was in effect change the world.
A search for the meaning and the mystery of the Tank Man.
Tiananmen Square, Beijing, the largest public space in the world, created on an inhuman scale. The monumental public buildings that line the edges and the vast treeless spaces in between speak of the insignificance of the individual before the might of the state. The atmosphere here is edgy. Even with permits and government minders, our filming is constantly interrupted. Soldiers, policemen, men in plain clothes all demand our papers. The authorities here are afraid of cameras. They know their power. They have hundreds of them trained on Tiananmen Square. Their cameras. Cameras in other hands are considered dangerous, and with good reason. This place can be a powder keg. On a June night in 1989, Tiananmen Square was a war zone. Carriers, tanks, and soldiers armed with semi-automatic weapons. By 5:30 a.m. on June the 4th, 1989, the Army's mission had been accomplished.
Gradually, the dawn came up. In Beijing, you know how misty it is, smoggy. This wasn't a sunrise. This was like a grayness gradually acquiring some sort of light. And where all this life had been was this quadrangle of tanks facing out. All the students were gone. And I just stood there and I watched.
T.D. Ullman was staying at this Beijing hotel, which has a commanding view of Shangan Avenue, the Avenue of Eternal Peace, that runs directly into Tiananmen Square. On these balconies, Western reporters and photographers had crouched, often under gunfire, to record the events of the night of June 3rd, 4th. Then, at noon on the 5th, when the army seemed in complete control, something remarkable happened on Shangan Avenue, immediately below.
The tanks danced. It was obscene. It was like an obscene dance. They just didn't roll out. They swiveled around. God knows why they did that. And then the moment came which has intrigued you and fascinated and moved the world. You stand there, you're looking down, this tank's coming out. It's got its gun up. And this man just went out and he said, stop.
It's absolutely extraordinary. You could look at him as unusually brave, but he probably wasn't. He was probably just an ordinary person who was so disgusted at what he had seen for the last few days. And he said, right, that's it. I'm going out and I'm going to just stand in front of that column.
The tank did not try to just run him over. It turned to go around him. And then the young man jumps in front of the tank. And then the tank turns the other way and the young man jumps the other side. They did this a couple of times, and then the tank turned off its motor. And then it seemed to me that all the tanks turned off their motors because it was really quiet.
Standing in front of a column of tanks. No one around him. He was all on his own with his shopping bag in his hand. He climbed on top of the tank, banged on the lid, said, "Get out of my city. You're not wanted here." We don't know exactly what he said, but it's clear that's what he wanted to say.
And I started to cry because I had seen so much shooting and so many people dying that I was sure this man would get crushed. So I remember thinking, I can't cry because I can't see. I want to watch this.
During this time, I'm thinking, this guy is going to be killed any moment now. And if he is, I just can't miss this. This is something that he's giving his life for. It's my responsibility to record it as accurately as possible.
And then after a while, the young man jumps down and the tank turns on the motor and the young man blocks him again. I thought, he's just going to get crushed.
I realized that the Public Security Bureau had been watching us from the other rooftop by binoculars. So I went in and took the film out of the camera and reloaded it into the plastic film camera. The shots that I'd taken from the night before, and they were pretty satisfied they'd cleaned up the situation. About a day and a half later, I worked my way back through the back streets to the Beijing Hotel, and luckily nobody had flushed the toilet.
So one of the most famous photographs of the 20th century was floating in the top of a lavatory
Floating
system.
in the top of the toilet, and possibly it could have been literally flushed, yeah.